Antibiotic resistance is one of the biggest threats to global health, food security, and development. This is a quote from the WHO website, the World Health Organization, and it gets at the heart of a very important global issue that we oftentimes don't even think about. That is antibacterial resistance. When we talk about global issues, we oftentimes think about things such as war, global warming, or whatever's happening in US politics. Why is it that we oftentimes don't even think about antibacterial resistance? And if it's such an important issue, what is there to do about it, and how can we go about doing so? I personally think that yes, we should be trying to fight the issue of antibacterial resistance. And specifically, we should be doing so while educating ourselves. I will say about three main things: how antibiotics work, what is the problem with antibiotic resistance, and how to stop superbugs. First, we must go over how antibiotics work and what they do. In 2021, Medline Plus published an article stating that antibiotics are medicines that fight bacterial infection. This is important since oftentimes we don't even understand what it is that a drug is doing when we take it. In this case, antibiotics fight bacterial growth in a place where it's not supposed to, that is, in a bacterial infection area. Furthermore, in 2021, the CDC published an article stating that antibiotics do not work on viruses. They need to be taken only and when prescribed. This is important to note, since oftentimes what people will do is that they will take antibiotics only up until they see improvement. Once they see improvements, they will stash them away for later use. It's important not to do this since, first of all, bacterial infections can show signs of improvement, but not be fully gone. And furthermore, as stated, even if we do get sick another time, there's no assurance that the antibiotics will work against that infection, because it has to be a bacterial infection, and it doesn't work against viruses. Now that we understand what antibiotics do, we can move on to the issue of antibiotic resistance and how that plays into antibiotics. And what is antibiotic resistance, and why is it so dangerous? In 2021, Forbes published an article stating that patients receiving unnecessary antibiotics get no benefits from these drugs, but might end up with dangerous overgrowth of bacteria in their bowels. Now, this is important to note since oftentimes what happens with antibiotics and the misuse of antibiotics is that you will overuse them and you will develop antibiotic resistance. This is important to note since this means that antibiotics stop functioning against bacterial infection, and they will rampantly continue to grow without anything to be able to stop them as far as antibiotics go. Furthermore, in 2021, the WHO published an article stating that bacteria, not humans, become antibiotic resistant. Antibiotic resistance leads to higher medical costs, prolonged hospital stays, and increased mortality. This is important to note since if we really want to tackle the issue of antibiotic resistance, we need to understand that it is the bacteria itself that is resistant and not us humans. And furthermore, we need to understand what it is that will happen to us specifically if we continue to misuse antibiotics. In this case, as stated, medical costs will go up since we will have to move on to more powerful, more expensive drugs as a result. Prolonged hospital stays because we will need to be further examined in order to adequately address specific issues, and increased mortality, which I believe is fairly obvious. As stated, antibiotic resistance is an extremely dangerous thing, and we must do our best to prevent superbugs from forming. Now that we covered both antibiotics and antibiotic resistance, what can be done to stop these superbugs? In 2021, Forbes published an article stating that the vast majority of those hospitalized with asymptomatic bacteriuria receive unnecessary antibiotics. This study discovered that antibiotic prescription was rampant. Now, this is important to note. In this study, bacteriuria, which is the condition of having bacteria in your urine, and asymptomatic means that you have no symptoms of such of infection. In this situation, hospitals were prescribing unnecessary antibiotics, which we know what the effects are. To solve this issue, I believe that You need stronger control of what is prescribed, and to make sure that we as patients understand the importance of what happens when we take unnecessary antibiotics. Furthermore, in 2021, Discovery published an article stating that scientists are revisiting whether bacterial viruses called phages could be weaponized to destroy bacterial pathogens. Now, this gives us hope because we can now move on knowing that if we do develop antibacterial resistance, if bacteria develops antibacterial resistance, there are solutions that we can go to solve these issues. But we must do so knowing and understanding what the misuse of unnecessary antibiotics does. Now, as we've discussed, it's important to understand what antibiotics are, what antibiotic resistance is, and lastly, how to stop superbugs. Now, as stated, I think it's important to know these things in order to address the issue of antibiotic resistance and the peril that it poses to our well-being. As stated, I agree with the WHO statement that antibiotic resistance is one of the biggest threats to global health, and we should definitely do everything in our power to stop it.